You gotta know the rules before you can break them. Some of the rules that I don't follow and that I love to break is I do not batch create content. I also don't post on the same day or the same time. I don't use trending sounds. I don't use any music in Reels. And I know that that is going to impact views. I've tried a content calendar. I've tried days. I've tried hiring someone. It does not work for me. If you follow more frequency or some of these best practices or guidelines, is it likely that you might see results faster than someone who doesn't? Probably, maybe.
There's so many different ways to grow. Growth is not just followers, it's deepening relationships and also reflecting on why you want to grow.
You do build a certain confidence within you when you take the time to create the content.
How do I grow? How do I get bigger numbers? How do I get bigger views? How do I get bigger followers? What about the people? It just seems like we've forgotten about how people really build trust. And if you're not selling a product, if you're a personal brand and you're the product, I even think it takes longer. I'm selling me.
Clever Crew, today we are so excited to welcome Chelsea Peitz back to the show. Chelsea is a leading voice in human-centered marketing and social media strategy, helping professionals rethink how they approach social selling by focusing on building real relationships online. Her social media is a goldmine of tips and advice breaking down how to grow your brand in ways that actually feel authentic. As a keynote speaker and a content coach, she's worked with tens of thousands of entrepreneurs and industry leaders, showing them how to use social media to connect with their audience and grow their business. In this episode, we're diving into Chelsea's take on what's next for social media in 2025, personal branding, and how to stand out in an ever-evolving digital landscape. So if you're ready to elevate your social strategy, stick around. This conversation is packed with gems. It's the beginning of 2025. I don't know how we got here, but there's a lot of questions right now about what is happening in the world of social media in 2025. Our Clever Crew has been asking, and so we thought Chelsea's the perfect person to come on and kind of give her 2 cents on everything in the social world for this year, how to prepare your mind, body, and soul for what you're posting online. So we thought we'd just start off with a few questions about that. And we actually pulled some data this time. We know that you love some data, so we're going to hit you with a few data related questions in a bit.
Okay.
But we're going to start off because a lot of our Clever Crew listens to Gary Vee. And we love Gary Vee, but sometimes he can be a bit intense and a bit overwhelming, and his advice can be challenging for the person who's just getting started on social media, which a lot of our Clever Crew is kind of at that phase where, they're in, but they're not all the way in yet, right? So Gary Vee says the top social media platforms in 2025 will definitely be YouTube, Instagram, and email.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I agree, right? It's kind of a variation of the same thing. I always kind of, chuckle when I hear about the predictions and the forecasts and the trend setting because we're like, is there really anything new? I think if I can read into that a little bit more, longer form content in general has been on the rise, which I love because I'm a wordy gal. I love to create a little masterclass in every little video. And YouTube has always been a great place for long form content where you really want to follow people and deep dive into a topic. They also have podcasts. Podcasts have been increasingly huge. So I think email, I love that he said that because, there's really less noise in the email, right? There's less noise in the email. There's a lot of things that are happening in the socials. There's a lot of ads. There's a lot of recommended posts. I mean, it's hard to find the people that you signed up to follow. So I think email is a very smart business choice. I agree with that. I did that this year and I'll be continuing to do that next year. And I was shocked at how much I grew my email list. So I was like, wow, this is like a real thing here. So I think email is really good. So he said YouTube, email, and Instagram. everybody knows I'm biased about Instagram. I think that Instagram happens to be so popular because it's a plus and a minus, where a lot of people are very overwhelmed by Instagram because it has so many bells and whistles. It's got live video and posts and different kinds of posts and videos and reels and stories, and it's just overwhelming for a lot of people. But on the other hand, I think that's one of the reasons why marketers gravitate towards it, because it does have so many types of surfaces, formats. Personally, I think stories is always been their secret sauce, their secret weapon, if you will. I think that there's really nothing like it anywhere, even from the original story factory, which was Snapchat. They've really, really, really cornered the market on that. And I think that we're really wanting realness. We're kind of tired of seeing the super edited. We're kind of just looking forward to people just like chatting in their parked car, just like you would in a story. At least I am. So I think that that's a reason why. And you can also monetize on it, of course. And it's a little bit different with Facebook because you can connect with people and it feels very normal to follow somebody that maybe you haven't met in real life or have 3 degrees of separation from. So, not to downplay any of the other socials, not to say you should be on Instagram over TikTok, but I am a fan of Instagram, and personally because of the stories component of it.
Yeah. Stories give such a great, easy in for potential clients and just friends, colleagues to DM you. You're just really creating that space for it to be an easy conversation online, because you essentially started the conversation and they didn't have to, and it didn't have to be awkward.
We love less awkward social media in 2025.
We do.
We do. We already naturally contribute to it. So like help us out here. Help a girl out.
So we've seen a couple new platforms pop up. I explored Lemon 8 for like 2 hours one day. I didn't get it. I didn't understand. So I just like gave up. But two things, BlueSky, Lemon 8, have you heard of them?
Yes.
Are they is there stay power here? Do you
So
know?
I tried lemonade when it first came out. And I was like, I'm not really sure how different it is than anything else. I'm like, this just feels like more sort of the same. Like, from what I recall, and again, I did not spend much time on it. What I recall, it felt a little bit more like a Pinterest sort of meets a feed of some sort. And so I was like, I just don't know. I mean, you know me. I'm a maximalist when it comes to design and joy, and a minimalist when it comes to a lot of work on social media. I was like, one platform is enough for me. So I didn't really do anything with it. Now, I recently just heard of BlueSky. I know nothing about it. I literally thought yesterday, I thought, do I want to just go into the App Store and download this and see what this is? And I said, absolutely not. I don't. I do not. I absolutely am not interested in adding anything else.
But we know what I am interested in though, Chelsea. I am interested in you downloading it and then you giving me your like initial reaction to it on like a green screen reel or something. I just want to know what Chelsea Peitz thinks.
Oh, no, like maybe recording yourself. That would be cool.
Yeah, so I haven't tried it. Is it like a Twitter? Is it like a Twitter or like a Threads? I'm not
I
really
don't
sure.
know. It honestly
Hmm.
sounds like a spaceship name or something. I just,
We love a spaceship. I'm not sure about, yeah. So I don't know anything about BlueSky, but I have recently heard it coming up again and again and again. So it's perked up my interest. But I have to say I have not actually explored it.
But you have been an early adopter of social media platforms in the
Yes, I
past,
have.
correct? Yeah. If I remember correctly, Snapchat, you were a pretty early adopter there, and that really catapulted your love for social media and like connecting
It
online.
did. Not to say that there aren't potential new horizons and renaissances that could be happening in the future. There's always room for that. There was just something really special at that time because there was nothing like
yeah.
it at all. We never had seen a social media platform where there was no feed and you couldn't find anyone. It was very different. And you essentially just had to figure out what to do with the camera. So that in and of itself was so new, kind of so exciting and strange, and figuring that out. And there's just something about having no idea what you're doing. It's kind of a blessing. It's like this really cool experience that you'll never get back. And now a lot of things are very similar, as you know. So I think unless something really different comes along, I'm not
Yep.
sure if a lot of us will have the same experience that we did in figuring out Snapchat. Because remember, this was before Facebook
Yeah.
Live. Like that wasn't even really a thing. So
Right.
we always think, oh, we got live and video and
Yeah.
all that. I'm like, well, this didn't even
Yeah.
exist. Like not
Crazy.
even stories like we have them now. It wasn't like that at all. And the Snapchat today is a very, very, very different Snapchat than it was in like 2011. So I think there was something about, almost it was like the iPhone for the first time where you're like, whoa, this is different. And since then, there's been a lot of phones, smartphones, and we're like, yeah, we get the smartphone, we get the smart TV. Yep, it's just a new one. So unless it's something really, really different, then I don't think we're gonna, see anything that's gonna probably blow my mind. But yeah, I was an early adopter of Snapchat. It definitely changed my life and my business and the trajectory of where that was going. And it was a really cool moment, I think, in time for me for that particular type of app, because nobody had any idea what they were doing. And now I feel like we've got TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and it's kind of like if you know what you're doing on one, you kind of can figure out what you're doing on another. But that was the first time we were like, we have no idea what we're doing. And we all love it. And there's nothing that we need to do, and nobody can track if we know what we're doing. And it's kind of awesome. And it was a freedom of, I have no idea what I'm doing, so I'm just going to try it all.
Be creative. Yeah. Um, this is a fun fact for our clever crew. I met Chelsea on Clubhouse
Oh,
in 2020.
yes.
So
Yes.
that's where we first got introduced. It wasn't Instagram. It wasn't real life. It was
Hmm.
Clubhouse. And that's how we became friends. So social media works,
It
y'all.
does.
Like, do not sleep on social media. Some of my best friends came from connecting in some way in the online space.
Yeah, all of my great friends are all social media. Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
And now we have reasons to travel. Like I was working on my like big ass calendar for 2025, and I've got like my personal vacations, my self-care retreats, but then I'm once a quarter, I'm going to go and visit in a different city somebody that I met online because they just happen to also
Hmm.
be a really good friend. And it's really cool to have seen that grown over the last couple of years. I feel like it's underrated side of social media.
I agree.
So, Chelsea, what is one maybe social media trend or mindset that you hope goes away in 2025?
I'm so glad you asked this question because I'm the anti-trend. I'm like the
Yeah.
anti-trend
Mhm.
person. I'm the unicorn that's like, this is the trend. I don't want to do that. It's just how I'm built. So I love when we're looking at what is the trend that we think. Now, I would say that almost like a pushback on so much AI. And I specifically mean like the GPT stuff. And I don't know if y'all have noticed this, and I still use AI pretty much every day. So I'm not suggesting that, it doesn't have amazing benefits, it's not efficient. It really does help me take a jumble of ideas and help me kind of put it and refine it. It does. But I find lately, and I've been doing some testing because I'm like, I've kind of been noticing this. I actually want to test this out. That it seems like in the past few months, it's the same basic kind of content, and it's kind of getting boring to me. And you know what I was finding personally is that what I was gaining in time, I was sacrificing in my creative process. I was sacrificing in just my creativity, period, because I thought, oh, I can do more and make more content and make more captions and make more scripts with a GPT than I can if I'm handwriting it and figuring out each thing and kind of putting it together. But I honestly really missed the creative process. And there's something really magical about like having this idea that you're like, wow, I actually came up with that. I wrote that out. And I look back at my old stuff and I'm like, did I write that? That's like pretty great. I wasn't thinking of it at the time, but I would like to see less reliance on some of the GPTs and the AIs, because as a creative or an artist, if you want to call it that, not everybody looks at their content creation as that. But personally, I found that I was really uncreative the more I was using these tools, and I wasn't enjoying it. And I was like, you know what? Like, forget about this quantity. I'd rather go back to quality. Like, there is an intrinsic value for me taking a day or two to craft a really deep script or process or how to. It actually helps me present it much better in the future. So it's actually something for me too. I'm not just like, let me make this script or this piece of content for the world. It's actually helping me to get better at all that I do, and my coaching and my speaking and on stages and off stages, when I go through that strange process that I go through that I kind of find hard and annoying. And I'm like, oh, here we go again. Now it's time to sit down and do this. But there is something that really brings me a lot of joy about it. And so I would like to see us have a little self-trust, and have a little more of us that makes us unique in that content. And it's hard because I fell into the trap. I fell into that trap too. And I still love using it, like I said, every day. But now I always start from within before I go outside. And I'm like, let me just put all my stuff down here. I don't need to make it sound pretty. I don't need to make it sound great. It can just be a bunch of randomness. And then it can help me sort of find out, well, what are the themes that I'm talking about here? Or is there a better way that this makes sense to say it? And so instead of starting with it, I would recommend, like start with you and then help it refine you from there, and then use it for outsourcing efficiency on, cross posting or making different types of content. But I really missed the creative process. And I was like, the reason that I miss it is because I'm using this thing too much.
Yeah. And you do build a certain confidence within you when you take the time to create the content. And that confidence comes through in your speaking, I'm sure, in your talks with your clients after, because you actually spent the time to create this, and your passion and confidence will show.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite quotes, I don't know who said it, so maybe I'll have to Google, or Candace, you might just Google as I start writing, that, right? Or like saying the quote now, but about writing in particular and is
soul and just elements of it.
There's nothing to writing. Maybe someday. You simply sit down at your desk and open a vein.
I love that.
And you feel that, right? Like you put your essence and your soul and just elements of it. Nothing that AI can create. Maybe someday it will and whatever, but like that's not today.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you, Chelsea. Like I did this the other day. I had AI ChatGPT generate some topic ideas for Q1, and instead of just like blindly like creating, captions and frameworks and whatever for like all of that content, I went down the list of topics and I kind of noticed like, what did I physically respond to? Like, what like caught my eye? Like almost like muscle testing it, and there were 2 or 3 out of a list of 20. And then I scrapped the others. And then now I'm going to actually like dive in and write on those 2 or 3. So
yeah, I agree. I'm throwing out more than I'm keeping. And I love that. Like, I love that we're like, no, yes. And so you're still taking the time, because you're going to spend the time, instead of making 20 things, you're going to spend the time that you would make those 20 things, those 2 or 3 really things that moved you, that you actually felt like you were excited about creating.
And Kat, you're right. So I Googled.
Oh, I love it.
And it's actually Hemingway.
Oh,
and it's,
of course it is.
Nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed.
Oh, and bleed.
Oh, wow.
See, so I changed it
without
even realizing
I like what you did there, Kat. I thought that resonated.
Thank you. I wrote that, I guess. I
inspired by.
Yeah.
Inspired by. Yes.
Yeah.
Can I give you one more thing that I'm kind of hoping that you don't see?
Yeah. Yes.
It's funny because I've been thinking about making this post for a while, and I don't know why I just haven't like made it, but I envision this like carousel post with just text that's like, you don't actually need a scroll stopping hook. You just need to start talking. And so I'm kind of in this world of like, do we really need to think about like all of these curiosity driven, hooks that are just like, let's just start talking. Like, let's just start talking. And then also too, and I get it, like, I know our content's going out to people that don't know us yet. So if you are talking about a topic that requires a lot of expertise, it's very tempting to say, and here's my expertise and why I'm X, Y, and Z. But it's like, I just want to like get to the thing. I just want to get to the thing. And so what I'm working on is like, okay, let me just pull back my 15-second build the story into the hook and just to get into it. Because as a consumer, I'm like, okay, just where are we? What, and like, unless you are a full-time copywriter, like, and I look at those people's content, I'm like, oh my God, this is genius. Like the way that you built this copy that like, yes, I'm still here after 20 seconds waiting for you to tell me what the thing is. And then they tell you and you're like, that's it? But that was brilliant the way that you built that, right? That's not me. I am not a natural copywriter. I'm not hiring somebody who's a copywriter. So it's a little bit more of a struggle for me. But I'm also like, let's get into my anti-hook era. Like, let's just start talking or get to the thing.
Get to the thing. Yeah. Because what happens is if that thing is actually impactful, then they'll go down the rabbit hole and figure out who you are, Chelsea, and figure out where, how to get started or that. Yeah.
I've literally never thought, and I've watched a lot of medical things, like a lot of like expertise driven stuff. I've never thought, who is this person and what credentials do they have? I've literally never thought that. I'm like, oh, that was helpful. That was good. That was interesting. Maybe I'm just the weird one, but I've never been like, well, what are their credentials that I should be listening to this? I don't know. So, and I'm guilty. Like I've done it where I'm like, I've written 2 books and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't even want to hear that.
So one other thing that Gary Vee has predicted, shifting gears a little bit from content to your audience, your community, and your followers. Mm-hmm. He's predicting that follower count is going to become irrelevant in 2025. Do you agree? Is it more nuanced than that? Often it sometimes is. What's your take on follower count? Because that is like such a boogeyman.
Yeah, I wonder what his like follow up was for that or his like specific reason. I always go back to one of my favorite people, which is Seth Godin. And I feel like, I always joke and say that I'm kind of a social media therapist. I feel like he's like the ultimate social media therapist. He's my ultimate like anti-social media, break the rules kind of a person. And in his book, This is Marketing, which is like that little neon orange book, everybody in marketing should get it. It's great. He talks about the smallest viable audience, like the smallest viable market, and how if you're going to be really impactful with your content, it's about reaching a smaller group of people who will want to work with you. And while we can all say logically, yeah, that makes sense, right? We still get wrapped up in these metrics because that's what these apps do, right? It's a dopamine system in our brains that we tie to some sort of value of us as a human being. And even though I know that, I still can be triggered by that. So I love that idea. I love the idea of even like hiding your followers. Like I think that's a really interesting concept because another trend, I don't know if I'd call this a trend, but I would love for people to also think about, instead of how do I grow? Well, growth doesn't necessarily mean new. Growth can mean deeper with the people that you already have. And I don't even know the statistic. I actually recently went down the rabbit hole trying to find this statistic about repeat customers and the percentage of customers that will come from people you already know versus brand new people. Now, I couldn't find it. I didn't spend a whole bunch of time looking for it, but I'm like, this is so true. Like we know this to be true. And when we did not have social media, and I'm old enough to have had an adult sales career before social media. So it was literally like, how many people did you talk to in a day? How many people did you see? How many opportunities did you have to talk about how you can help people? And nothing has changed. So why is it that we have this disconnect about social media, that it should be so much different than being in real life, in 2000, when we were like, I had 8 meetings today and 2 of them signed up with me, that sort of thing. yeah, it just seems like we've forgotten about how people really build trust. And if you're not selling a product, if you're a personal brand and you're the product, I even think it takes longer to connect. I mean, I don't have a 29.99 thing that I'm going to be selling. I'm selling me. And so if I'm selling me, I'm going to have to build some level of trust with someone else before they decide that they want to buy whatever it is that I have to offer. So I think it's really interesting that we often forget about, the basics of sales and sales building, especially when it's not product based and it's really service based and personal brand based. So yeah, I love the idea of getting away from how do I grow? How do I get bigger numbers? How do I get bigger views? How do I get bigger followers? What about the people? Because I bet if we all looked, and I'm guilty too, I have not gone back. I could probably stop posting and literally spend the first 6 months of 2025 going back and going through all of the people that I follow or all the people that follow me and starting conversations. And that would probably yield me better results than if I upped my posting from a couple times a week to double that. So I mean, it's just my personal guess on what will happen in that experiment. But we always forget about the people that we know. Like, start with who you know. It's going to serve you in the end, probably,
Yeah.
than getting more new people. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah. And you have to remember too, like, what are you selling exactly? I mean, there's a lot, most people here listening are probably in real estate or mortgage, right? That's not something you buy every 6 months. It's not something you buy every year. It may be something you buy every 10 years. And so a lot of the content that is teaching us about social media marketing on social media are from social media experts. Well, I can tell you that you're going to get more views and more shares on your how to grow on Instagram video that you posted on Instagram than you're going to get ever, probably about, the ins and outs of how to invest in an Airbnb. It's like, well, we're here on the platform. You're making content about the platform I'm on. And yeah, I am interested in learning how to figure this all out. So we have to remember that a lot of the stuff we're consuming are people who are teaching about the thing that we're actually on, and we're comparing our content and our results to someone who is a social media expert or social media manager who's talking about Instagram Reels. And you're like, yeah, I want to know how to make Instagram Reels. Of course, that's going to get more traction and more views. So I think that's always important to remember too, because I'm always like, okay, but you can't compare yourself. Like, you are in a high trust, high fiduciary, high ticket price point. $1 million in probably most markets or more, right? Like, it's different than the 297 course that you're going to sell me about Instagram Reels versus a $2 million home that I know that mentally is going to be a massive struggle and pain to go through at some point, form, or fashion in the sales process. So they forget about all that. And they're like, but this person over here, and you're like, okay, but like, what are they selling? Because it's not what you are selling.
Yep.
The other thing too that like gets me, well, first of all, I have had clients say that, like, I want strangers to call me. I'm like, if you were walking down the street in the evening with your dog, would you want a stranger to approach you? No. Like, let's start thinking how we would act and be as humans in real life. I don't want strangers talking to me. I don't even
Real
want
life.
acquaintances
Yeah.
talking to me because I'm an introvert. And I'm just like, RBF is hard on right now. And I have my Irish exit already planned before I even show up to the networking event. Okay. I also think too, like, we want you to grow. There's so many different ways to grow. I love that you brought that up, Chelsea, that like growth is not just followers, it's deepening relationships and also reflecting on why you want to grow. Growth is not the end in and of itself. It's a means to an end. So like be really clear about what the actual end is, and not just do it because you saw somebody else do it or you think it'll solve a problem today. Like, just, I want to see more questioning and thoughtfulness in the new year.
So Chelsea, I kind of want to pick your brain here, since I have you, about kind of maybe the rules. And I maybe saw a reel that you might have made about this. Some of like the social media rules that you break and you unapologetically don't give a shit. You just break the rules. I want to give the Clever Crew some permission to like decide what's right for them and cut out some of the noise sometimes.
Yes.
So what are the rules that you break that you encourage your clients to break on social media?
Mm-hmm. I first want to mention that you got to know the rules before you can break them. And that means that nobody has carte blanche to be like, I just don't feel like doing this and I don't want to do it. Cause like I've been there. I do all of that. And so I think it's important to have a why as well. Okay. So those are sort of my two caveats. I am a permission giver, and there is so much relief that people get when I'm like, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. And there's other ways that you can do it, right? There's a million and one ways to cook something. And so it's the same way with social media. Now, what I always say too is, if you follow more frequency or some of these best practices or guidelines, is it likely that you might see results faster than someone who doesn't? Probably, maybe, right? So with all of those caveats there, some of the rules that I don't follow and that I love to break is, I know you guys, this is something that you guys do and I don't, but you know it already. I do not batch create content. I have tried, and I can honestly say I've tried for 4 years. I've tried a content calendar. I've tried days. I've tried hiring someone. It does not work for me. I am somebody who waits for a vibe, an energy, a download to hit me. And that's when I know that I want to do it. And are there other ways that I've kind of worked in my weird way to do it? Yeah, I have. I found odd things that kind of help me, or ways that can help me get into a more open creative space to go through some ideas. But I don't batch create content. I also don't post on the same day or the same time. I don't use trending sounds in reels. I don't use any music in reels. And I know that that is going to impact views. I know that. I also make reels that are over 60 seconds. And I know that that's going to impact recommendations and suggestions. And the reason I'm doing that is, one, a lot of the stuff I make is for me. I always start with me. And everyone's like, wait, that's a rule you're breaking. It should be about them. I go, but I'm the one making it. And so if I don't love what I'm making, I'm not going to want to make it. I know myself. Mm-hmm. Self-awareness is key, right? So this is not for everyone, but this is just how I do it. And so, one, it has to be something that lights me up. It can't be something on a list where it's like 3 tips for blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's Wednesday and I'm going to make this. I've tried it that way. I did not feel fulfilled. And if I'm going to do this long term, I have to have some sort of fulfillment in it. So I make something that sounds interesting to me, intriguing and challenging to me, because it's challenging to get a masterclass into a 60-second reel.
But you do it so well, like so well. I will rewatch your reels, Chelsea, always.
Thank you. And so I make something, and I oftentimes make stuff that's challenging, and I don't want to do it, if I'm being honest, because I'm like, this is going to be hard. I'm going to have to think. And then once I do it, I'm like, that really helped me understand how to communicate this so much better. I really now have my thoughts all in one place. I really took the time to do that. So I'm jealous of the people that are like, I have so many ideas. They're just coming out of everywhere. And I just don't have enough time in the day to make them. I'm not that person. I love that for the person who is that. I wish I had a little bit more of that. I can tell you that batch creating is 100% more efficient. It really is. You probably should do it. So I don't batch create. I don't do a lot of trends unless something really hits me and makes me think, oh, I want to do that. I also don't believe that content is the number one thing that the algorithm or our audience is looking for. And people are shocked and taken aback when I'm like, I think it's our conversations, and there's a whole bunch of stuff we could talk about algorithms and conversations, but ultimately it's the permission to, use the tool like we would be a human in real life, because whether we like it or not, we're stuck with technology for the rest of our working lives. Like this, Riverside, Teams, Zoom, FaceTime, it would take social media out of it. We're stuck on technology, right? It's a lot of tech. And so why don't we think about how can we use it to be as human as possible, because there's a real human on the other side of that. And so it's really about permission to, one, how can I talk to people today? How can I relieve the pressure? Because like I'm burnout, I'm about to have a baby, I'm taking care of my parent, I'm moving them into a facility. Like all of these things can happen, seasons and businesses and burnouts and all the things. And so how can you create something that even if you're like, I just have zero desire to create, we can still talk to people. Like there's nothing like this. Like I don't need your phone number. I don't need your email. I don't even need to follow you. Like I could literally still make someone's day or make them feel seen with a very simple, quick and easy direct message or comment. And if nothing else, that hits my dopamine for the day and theirs. And not to mention the algorithmic benefits, but it's not about building a content machine. It's really about building a context machine where we can be real humans and literally talk to each other, happens to be at scale. And so when I got through that mind frame, I was like, oh, okay, I don't have to have all these rules, because I did all that. I had the 20 box checklist. I did all those things, and I wasn't that happy. And I can't say that it made that much of a difference compared to how I do it now, which is just whenever I feel like doing it.
I think, I mean, so much yes, like yes to everything you're sharing, Chelsea. And I think one thing that you're hitting on that I want the Clever Crew to really take away is that, look, Candace and I talk about productivity. We talk about efficiency. We talk about time saving apps and time saving this, and time is your greatest resource. Yes. However, also, and maintaining and nurturing your potency and your creativity. And sometimes that means sacrificing a little bit of the efficiency for the creativity and the potency. So it's like, and there's no right answer. There's no proper formula or framework. Everybody is wired differently and gifted differently and upskills differently. But I love that you noticed that. And I'm selfishly, I'm actually like in a bit of a crisis right now too in my own business of how much batching do I do? How much spontaneous do I do? And so I'm even answering that question for myself. And so it's very relevant. It doesn't matter where you are in your journey. It always crops up.
And I think you're allowed to change. What was I was writing something about perspective the other day, and I was talking about this idea. And I thought, well, what is it that makes us afraid to share our perspective? And one of the things that came up for me was, well, what if I have one now and I want to change it later on? And I'm like, yeah, that, this evolution of how you can change your perspective. And there's just because you have one perspective 5 years ago, et cetera. I think that's true with all the things, and especially with content. Like you can batch create, like maybe in 2 years, I'll be like, you guys, I am a batch creating maniac now. And can you believe it? After 10 years of never batch creating. So it's okay. Like you can evolve, you can change, you can hire people, you can grow, you can outsource. And yeah, absolutely. There's so many great things that I can implement to be more efficient with my time. And so it's just more of like that self-awareness and the self-trust, which in and of itself is a really vulnerable place to be, is like, can I trust myself? And this is uncertain. And like, sorry to say, but like the uncertainty is like a really good opportunity to learn, because we can't learn to self-trust without the opportunity of being uncertain. So, it's hard to kind of, figure that out, but it's like, you've got to try the things, and it's okay if you want to evolve and change. And, I am really kind of, maybe I'm manifesting that in a couple of years, I become that.
I was just going to say, we're going to look back on this, be like, Chelsea, remember when you said never again?
Yeah. I'm just one of those people where it has to click. It has to feel right. It
has to feel good.
My coach is always like, I know. It has to click. We're waiting for the click. I go, I know. I can't force it. I'll know when it's done. It will tell me. The work will tell me when it's
the universe will like use me as a conduit.
Yeah. Exactly. So I don't know if anybody else feels frustrated with that, but I mean, nobody's more frustrated than I am with myself. I'm like, come on, when is the click going to happen? I try to go for a walk. I do the meditation. I'm like, happen. What is it? And sometimes I can't make it happen.
It's so interesting that you talk about perspective and like shifting your perspective, because I think what holds people back from creating content on social media is often that, well, what if that thing that I said today is wrong or different in 5 years, right? And we just had Amy Landino on, who is a YouTube creator and speaker, and she's incredible, incredible human. And we were talking about writing a book. And the reason that I feel so hesitant, because so many people are like, when are you just going to write a book? Like, you should just write a book. Like, why won't you do this? And the thing that's holding me up in my mind is that what I think today is not what I thought 3 years ago. And if I write a book, it's like this, it's going to exist forever. And my perspective is going to change probably even by the time the book gets published.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, why can't you just make that your opening paragraph?
Literally. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so funny to me that I'm okay with doing it on social media because that feels like faster. And people forgot what I said 5 years ago.
But a book has more permanence.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I do get that. And I think probably many of the people that we admire probably have changed their perspectives over 20 years of writing. I mean,
it's why they write multiple books. So you're just
even Gary, right? Even Gary V and Seth Godin, there's the essence of the person. Like your essence, Cadence, is always just going to be like, say it as it is, right? You're just going to tell people, you're going to get to the point, which is why we love you. And that's never going to change. But, all these other things can change too. So I think it's interesting how we always hold ourselves to this standard that we're like, but wait, the people that have written the books that I enjoy certainly are different people than they were 10 years ago, right? But we never think about that. So I get that. I get that could be a limiting belief that's kind of like, I don't know if I'm ready to do that yet.
I'm not sure when this episode is in particular going to go live, but we had Chris Benjamin on the podcast. Chelsea, do you know him?
I recently just finally met him in person in Vegas at a conference. Beautiful. Yes.
Love that. So we had him on and he was talking about, each year having a big misogi, like just this beautiful big goal that is so cleansing and refreshing because you've pushed yourself beyond your wildest dreams of whatever you thought you could do, however hard it is, however difficult. And mine is to co-write a book in 2025. So Candace, be an author along with me too. I am working through the same limiting belief because me, one of my personal mottos is I reserve the right to change my mind at any time for any reason. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be a huge test for me. So who knows?
I love that. I'm excited. I'll be the first one to buy. I'll pre-order both of your books.
Thank you.
I sold one already before I even wrote it. I love that.
Yes. There we go. See what we just manifested, Candace? That's the power of community, y'all, and the amazing people and trusting yourself, right?
Chelsea, we are in the new year, it's 2025, and I know I've been watching your Instagram stories for the past few months, and you have been methodically changing a lot of things in your online courses, on your on-demand courses. We see you working on them. We know you're updating the videos, the scripts, all of the things that you provide. I'm so excited to get in there and see what I can learn in there. But tell the Clever Crew about your on-demand courses and how they can access them and what they can expect.
Yes. So I am a unique learner, and I did not realize that something that I thought was such a challenge growing up was going to be my superpower. I need to break things down in a very specific way, in a very specific order to really get stuff. And I thought it was the only one. And it turns out that as I was helping people sort of learn how to use Instagram and content, they were like, oh, this really makes sense to me. And I've struggled with other courses and classes. And I thought, well, maybe I have something here. So I have revamped and redone. I mean, when I say revamped and redone, I deleted everything and started over. There's not one original video. There's maybe one original video.
Burnt it all down to the ground.
I burnt it all down to the ground because why not?
Why not? And
so this is really for beginner friendly, intermediate. This is very tactical, very how to, step-by-step tutorials, because a big fear is pushing the buttons. A big fear is understanding what someone means when they say how to be searchable. What is an algorithm? And to actually give you an opportunity to pause and actually push the button. So in it, it's got profile optimization. I talk about algorithms. I talk about reels versus carousels versus stories and how to create all of those things. There is a bit of strategy in there. But again, the strategy I always think of almost as secondary and like, let's get this foundational done first. And then for deep strategy is where you can then go into my small group live coaching, which is called Uncopy Pastable Brand. And I do host those 4 times a year, usually once a quarter. So yeah, the new course will be $127, which is a steal. I think there's like 200 modules in there, not to melt your brain down, but just to let you know
50
that
cents per module. Insane. Insane. Guys, if you do
and
not
you're
run
hired.
out and get it, oh, there we go. Copywriter. I can be your
Yes,
copywriter.
yes, exactly. So yeah, and everything is on my website, which is just chelseapeitz.com. Of course, everything is on my Instagram, which again is my name, and it has the blue check mark. If there is anybody that doesn't have a blue check mark, active stories, anything about their zany dogs, it's not me. I will never sell you anything in the DMs. I will never ask you to go to another app or to Telegram or Bitcoin or any of those things.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. You definitely need to get your hands on that if you're that person who's been struggling to get started because it all feels overwhelming and you need that step-by-step breakdown. That sounds like an amazing place to start. So check out Chelsea Peitz. We will definitely drop the link in the show notes for you to go ahead and access that. And lastly, this has become my new favorite segment. It is called Not Nice Advice. And this is your opportunity, Chelsea, to talk to our clever crew. We have
I'm so nice. I don't know if I can do
you
not
are
nice
so
advice.
nice. I know. Not nice advice is like basically just shoot it straight. We don't need to sugarcoat things. That's all. Okay. Chelsea's version of not nice, whatever that is for you. This comes in from Boundary Free and Breaking Down. So I have a client that always seems to be pushing boundaries. They send last minute changes, text and call me at all hours, expect things that are out of our scope of work, and it feels like I'm constantly on call and it's exhausting. How can I communicate my boundaries without coming off as unprofessional or risking losing them as a client? How do I ensure that they actually respect my boundaries moving forward so I can feel like I have some balance back in my life? I feel like this is a great question for you, Chelsea.
Are you saying that because I'm a recovering people pleaser, a type A, a rule follower, and all the things that I'm overcoming, right? And that I have overcome. I am no longer. I'm just stating it. I have overcome. And boundaries are a really, really big part of that. And what I will say is, it's actually not a script. It's none of that. It's not what you're going to say to the person. It's really what you're going to say to yourself. Because at the end of the day, when we don't have a boundary, it's because we struggle with something about what if they don't like me? What if they leave me? What if I lose that money? And so we're always coming from a place of lack, right? And I'm all about abundance and mindset and all of those things. And it's really the deep, hard inner work that we have to do. And it doesn't feel good because we want to avoid it and we don't want to look at parts of ourselves or why we might feel like that. Because it's like when somebody says, I don't want to do social media. And really, when I get down to the bottom of it, it has nothing to do with time. It has nothing to do with social media. It's that we have a fear of showing up and having someone judge us. And we all want to be loved and liked. And that in and of itself is the same thing about a boundary, because we want to be that person who's accommodating and helpful and say, oh my gosh, you're so great. Every time I text you, it doesn't matter what time of day, you're always there. And that makes us feel good. So the first thing is going to be some inner work, which is hard, right? And I don't know, how much time you have before you're going to start emailing this person. But it starts with understanding that actually, when you tell someone your boundary, they may have their own story that has nothing to do with you, that has everything to do with them, and they may not be your client. That actually could happen. And so it's really about understanding, can you get there before you are so pissed off and burnt out that you have a complete meltdown and you're like, you know what? I don't even want you as my client. Goodbye. Now, hopefully we can have a boundary discussion and know that going forward, that can be a part of your discussion as you lay that groundwork for the person, and know the why. Because the problem is most people say, here's my boundaries, but they don't explain why. And one of my boundaries is, I don't do anything over 2 nights because I want to be with my family. My son is almost 12. I have a limited amount of time. And one of the things that I've decided to do in my business is if I have more than one overnight trip, I will not do it. I will bring my family. And so when I can explain that, because it's one of my core values, nobody's ever been like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard anyone say. Like, nobody's ever been blatantly disrespectful like that. People may not hire me for something, but they're like, okay, fair enough. So it's really about understanding your why and being able to articulate the why and not feeling ashamed that whatever your fill in the blank is. Mine is, I have limited time. I grew up in a family with a parent that worked all the time, and I never saw them. And I had all the things in the world that you could ever want. And I really missed that I didn't have a relationship with my parents. We never sat down at a dinner table. We always sat in front of the TV. I don't go into this level of detail, but I'm just telling our audience out that. And that is why I have a hard line about that. And most people will say, well, let me see what we can do. Let's see if we can work that out. Let me see what that is. I will not answer my phone after 5 p.m. Probably because I'm sleeping, but I literally
cuddled up with Daisy and Jasper.
Yeah, I just won't, because I don't go out on Sundays. Like, even our family, they're like, we're having a family birthday. I'm like, that's too bad. We love you guys, but Sunday night is our family night. We watch a movie as a family. We've done it every Sunday for X amount of years. We are not going to change unless it's something really out of the ordinary. And so I think it's really important to look at what matters to you and why it matters, then versus saying like, well, I just don't like to take calls on the weekend. Like, you could say that, but also like, why don't you like to take calls on the weekend? That should be pretty easy for you to answer. So yeah, you may lose a client, or you know what? You may gain a whole lot of respect for yourself and be like, oh, that felt so good. And and some of the best things that ever happened to me was getting rid of a client, whether it was them stepping away or me saying something that made them decide to step away. It wasn't meant for me. And that is a hard thing to get to, that I can now literally say, oh, it wasn't meant for me. It was this or something better. I wasn't like that 4 years ago. I was like, oh my gosh, what if I lose this client? I better say I'll do it for half price, because what if nothing else comes through the
door?
For
free, actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
It's just,
yeah, exactly.
We've all been there. Glad we are moving on from that, and hoping this helps the Clever Crew as they're listening in. There's a couple boundaries that I know that you have, Chelsea, just from watching your stories and being a speaker alongside you at events. I have heard that you don't speak after a certain time. Is it 2 or 3?
I don't speak after a certain time, mainly because for my energy to deliver a message with passion, I want my energy to be top game. Yep. And honestly, I want the people in the audience to have the right energy too. So for me to show up and inform and influence and impact, that is a very important portion for me, or point. And a lot of people just probably look at it and think, oh, okay. It's really truly about the energy and knowing myself. And if I was a night owl, I'd probably be like, oh, you can put me at the end, but I know me and how to deliver and how I want that energy to feel. So yeah, I don't speak after 2.
And we know that you're in the bed office around that same hour, so it all makes sense.
The bed office.
The bed office. Yes, I love that. In fact, I'm going to include the bed office in a post.
There we go.
Of my 2024 Wrapped.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Chelsea. We really appreciate you spending this time with us, and we will drop every link to connect with Chelsea in the show notes, and you can always slide into her DMs on Instagram, and we hope you do. Thanks for joining us on Not Nice, Clever.
Remember to follow Not Nice, Clever wherever you listen to audio.
And if you haven't already, drop that 5-star review.
Share your takeaways. Tell us your story. We love to hear it.
Signing off, you're not so nice, but oh so clever besties that mean business.
See you soon.